Welcome to MindMakers. I'm your host, John Kim, co-founder and CEO of Sandbird. On the show, I talk to the people who are building the next generation of artificial intelligence, from founders to executives to technologists who are shaping the future of AI and its real-world impact. Today, I'm joined by Manish Sood, the founder and CEO of Reltio. It's a data unification system. And you started this company 15 years ago, back in 2011, tackling the surging the challenge of software and data sprawl by synthesizing into one kind of single trusted source of information. So the company has since grown to over 600 employees globally, serving customers from startups to enterprises. So we'd love to kind of hear more. So, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
Well, John, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. Feeling great, and I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Nice. And just for our audience, would you share a little bit about your story? How did you start your company? How did it evolve over time?
So Reltio from the very beginning has been focused on solving the data unification challenge in order to provide a real-time data intelligence capability into the enterprise. And the reason for us to think about that as the area to go after was based on my past experience. I had seen the sprawl or the explosion of data silos across the enterprise. When you think about the enterprise landscape, you always see customers using several applications. And when I say several, I remember when I started my career, early days of the entire CRM, ERP, application software type of evolution, I saw customers, who had 3 or 4 different systems, and they thought that their life was complicated. And fast forward to 2011, 2012 timeframe, they were already struggling with 300 plus or 600 plus different systems that they were using across the entire landscape. But the common recurring theme across all of those customers was their need for understanding the core data that their business runs on. For example, when you think about all these different applications, all of them in some way, shape, or form use customer information or product information or supplier type of information, or in some cases, even employee type of information. But they all have different slices of that information. Sometimes it's overlapping information across these different systems, and sometimes it's complementary pieces of information, but no one system had a holistic view of this capability. So we decided that we wanted to go solve that challenge and create a holistic view that would span all these different applications that were in use in the enterprise and provide it as a single unified view that these customers could operationalize for their business operations.
Yeah, so is your primary buyers like the CIOs of the enterprises?
Great question. So, initially the audience that we started with was more on the IT side of the landscape. CIOs were definitely, the people signing off on this kind of an endeavor. But over a period of time, we have seen a shift where even business owners are starting to raise their hand and sign up for these kinds of capabilities because of the operational hurdles that they see in their ability to, run their business at speed and scale. And that's where they're looking for this kind of real-time data intelligence to be provided for their business operations.
Nice. So when you say business owners, is it more on the revenue generation side, let's say sales, marketing, or is it just across the board?
It can be sales, it can be marketing, or think about in some cases there are teams that are just focused on customer experience as an angle. With Sandbird, I'm sure you're familiar with that part of the landscape. Yep. It's not just the CMO or the sales team. It's a hybrid of both of those combined together. From a commercial operations standpoint, the way they're looking at capabilities, or in some cases, even risk and compliance teams, looking at this kind of information unified so that they have a better, deeper understanding across all the different aspects of the business.
Makes total sense, especially, I guess, in the public traded companies, compliance becomes super important. Maybe fast forward a few years, let's say, because we are seeing this massive surge of, obviously, AI agents, that's kind of what we do here at Sandbird too. How has this agentic AI impacted your business, let's say roadmap, vision, strategy? Tell us about your experience.
So, in order to answer that question, I'll take you a little bit back in time. When we started the company, one of the things that we knew as a directional North Star that every business has to think about is their ability to operate faster. I've never met a business that has said that they want to move slower, or they want to have less customers, or they want to have smaller number of products to sell. I don't think I will ever meet a business that will be oriented towards that direction. When you think about all of those things and think about the amount of friction that is in the enterprise, that's where we thought that the ability to unify the data would be a key compelling capability. But in order for them to leverage that, they would have to plug it into their business operations. So not just inform analytics, yes, that has to be done every day, but also making sure that the business operations that they're trying to run with, those business operations can be informed with the data that is unified in a low latency orientation in milliseconds. And that's where our initial thesis was that businesses would keep evolving and move towards a faster orientation. We didn't know back in 2011 that it would become agentic AI. But over the last, I would say, especially if you look at the last couple of years, you saw the evolution of Gen AI, and now you're seeing agentic AI at the forefront of some of that evolution. That's where it became, very pertinent to the work that we were doing, that plugging it into the agentic operations was another, benefit of the capabilities that we were providing. So that's how we tied it back to the agentic AI evolution and the work that we are doing.
So kind of putting ourselves in the seat of, let's say, a business owner, your customer, what is the experience like when they kind of go to your platform? How does that agentic experience manifest itself on your product?
So I'll use another customer example. We work with lots of financial services or insurance type of companies. One of the insurance companies is Liberty Mutual. And when they looked at their business, like every other insurance company, most of their systems were policy-based systems. Everything they sell to you, it's either a home policy or an auto policy or some other type of insurance policy, and they only know of that policy and John Kim associated with that policy. But if you ask them to pivot and say, tell me everything about John Kim and all the policies that they have across all different lines of business, they didn't have that answer because of the way in their systems were designed or the applications were designed. And one of the first things that they did was brought Reltio in, created this holistic view that connected policies to, who were the brokers, and the brokers to John Kim as the ultimate buyer of the policies, so that they could traverse it in any direction. And the first place to plug this kind of a capability in was in their call center operations, where when you think about the time to first call resolution, in that kind of a scenario, they were operating at about, I would say, 5 to 8 second type of a time frame within which they were resolving the call to an agent. We brought that down by plugging the Reltio data into that flow to 300 milliseconds or less. So big delta, for any kind of a call center operation. But on top of that, now what they're trying to do with AI is insert some of the agentic capabilities into that flow. And within those 300 milliseconds or less, they also want to have a tailored call script generated with recommended actions, that are already informed of what's going on with you or your account and the type of policies that you have, or what additional bundles you could have access to that they could cross-sell or promote to you. All of that information already personalized at a very specific level to be used during that first engagement with you.
Wow, there's a huge difference. I'm assuming a lot of customers are coming to you with like, hey, can we have this feature? Can we have that feature? Lots of ideas. So there's obviously a lot of hype. Kind of thinking about what kind of customer feedback or feature requests to implement at your business, what are you seeing, or what is your hypothesis around what is a hype around the features?
Yeah.
And what do you think is type of AI feature / value proposition will actually endure the test of time?
Well, it's a very interesting point in time where, as a product company, we have to think about what enduring value we can provide, productize a capability, bring it to market, but at the same time, make sure that it is tied down to a specific amount of ROI that it can generate for the customer and value that it can deliver. And what we did was narrow our focus down to not necessarily creating an agentic platform, because there are going to be lots of companies claiming that capability. But our focus has been on what kind of agentic workflows we can provide to the customers that will solve actual problems or get stuff done so that they can free up their resources to do more. And with that in mind, as we went and engaged with our customers, we took a few examples of what was doable and possible with some of the emerging capabilities combined with the data that sits inside Reltio. And during those conversations, they shared back with us, if we took in 3 examples, they immediately turned around and shared 15 to 20 different examples that they thought could also be added to that list. So it's a process where we are engaging with the customers with a specific orientation in mind, and giving them the ability to co-create with us, think with us, and think about where it will deliver value for their business.
So that's really interesting, because sometimes customers ask for a feature set that can either automate a lot of their own work, hopefully save a lot of costs or increase more revenue. When you kind of hear these feature sets, how do you draw the line between kind of replacing humans' actual work and potentially replacing humans' jobs versus an augmentation? How do you internally think about it, but also how do you communicate that to the customers?
The spectrum obviously goes from helping, assisting, all the way to replacing some of the human labor. And as we discuss some of the capabilities with our customers, we're looking at what's closer to the work that we do. For example, in our case, since we are bringing information together from multiple sources, creating a holistic view of customer, product, supplier, asset, location, any of these core domains that are most pertinent to their business, we are also talking to them and discussing how much of that requires human effort in just the constant curation and increasing the trustworthiness of the data. So is there work that we can take on as a product company, because that's closer to the sphere of our invention, and we can bring those features and capabilities to life. In fact, we are taking a leading role in proposing those innovations to them, versus the ability for us to say, this is an open platform, here's some invention that you, Mr. Customer, can do on your own using some of the capabilities. But that's where we are looking for them to provide input and feedback. And again, all of this, as you mentioned, requires a very specific balance as a product company, where you don't want to become a services company. You still want to look at, is it aligned with your roadmap or not? Is it going to create durable value for your own business versus the customer's business? And sometimes you'll find it checks both boxes, or sometimes you'll find that it'll be immensely valuable for the customer, but not necessarily a product feature that you'll be able to take to all other customers in your customer base. And that helps us decide, which side of the fence it falls in, where should we productize this capability, or should we provide it as a customization feature to the customers so that they can extend the platform, the capabilities, and do more with the foundational capabilities that they have access to.
Yeah, that's kind of what we also see from our own business, is kind of the Palantir model of forward deployment engineers and forward deployment teams. So when we kind of go visit customers on site, sometimes we do multi-day workshops and then kind of scope out what needs to be brought back to the core team to become part of our product roadmap. But sometimes we do offer a little bit of that implementation support and things like that. They may feel like a little bit of custom work. So it's always kind of hard to find the exact boundaries around what is services and one-off custom work versus like core product roadmap. And sometimes our hypothesis is wrong too. We think it's like a one-off feature for this customer, but turns out it's widely applicable to other enterprise
to other
accounts,
customers as well.
and vice versa.
And I think this will be every time there is net new innovation taking place at a broader scale in the industry or the landscape, this is bound to happen. So a little bit of the discipline of iterating through that, making sure what falls into the product category versus what falls into the customization category. Product companies will have to be more disciplined with that as well.
I guess, a similar kind of follow-up question to that is, what are, across some of your customers or experiences building with customers, what is the most surprising kind of second order effect that you've seen from AI adoption that kind of caught you or your team by surprise, like something that was unexpected but had kind of a high impact?
Well, there are two observations I have, which I have not seen in my entire career before.
Okay, this is the good stuff.
The first thing, as I mentioned before, that in some of these conversations, we took 3 or 4 examples, went to the customers with those examples to show them the art of the possible. The first fact that really surprised me was that even before the call was over, the customers were responding back with 15 to 20 different examples of what they wanted to see or experiment with. I have never seen that kind of a fast turnaround in conversations where, immediately they're coming back with 15, 20 different examples. And I'm just talking about 45 minutes to an hour long conversation. So that was very different from what I had seen in the past before. The second thing that really amazed me was, if I look at those examples, I would say 25% or less were examples of capabilities that you would put in the previously known software solvable sphere, where, it may have been a feature in another product, but they want to consolidate, or it may be a deterministic kind of a, business process or workflow that can be codified by writing traditional software. The remaining 75% type of scenarios that they were bringing to the table were net new, previously not solvable with prior generation type of software capabilities, because they required decisioning capabilities or reasoning capabilities as a part of the solution. And that was fascinating, because if you just think about the total addressable market from a traditional software lens versus now what's becoming available as a part of that software solvable sphere, it just massively expands the market.
It's super interesting because typically software generally is something that people kind of click and it responds in a fairly linear format, right?
Yeah.
So finite deterministic workflows and scenarios. And usually when you click it, you get a result back. Server request, server response. But to your point around decision and reasoning can be multi kind of step function that's happening behind the
Multi-step,
scene.
non-linear,
And less deterministic.
Yeah, non-deterministic in a lot of these scenarios, but that is the power of what's doable and possible now. And, we're still at the early stages of this cycle. Like any other massive tidal wave of innovation, this will also go through its own cycles of trials and tribulations. But I think the direction of what's going to be possible is very clear in terms of, what will this open up as a market opportunity.
Then maybe change almost from the opposite side. When you engage with a lot of these prospects and customers, sometimes they may ask questions that you think is like, okay, because I'm trying to sell to them, I'm going to answer those questions. But what are some of the questions you think are just plain wrong? Like they shouldn't be not even thinking about this, or maybe just like they're overly emphasizing this that actually doesn't happen in reality. What are they getting wrong?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One is most of the conversations today are starting from a point of fear where it's all about, is it going to displace my job? Is it going to, remove me from the equation? that sort of thought process. Um, I think there's a valid reason to think about those things, but to be overly concerned about it and lose out on the opportunity of what innovation is possible or what kind of other opportunities it'll bring to the table. Again, people use the industrial age as an example, or what happened with the cars coming in. But just think about, even in the software landscape, we have seen this evolution before. The role of a data analyst didn't really exist before Excel came around.
True.
So, should we run away from it or should we embrace it? That's the kind of question that we have to think about. And the more we can think about the opportunities and the type of landscape it can open up, that will open up everybody's mind to what the possibilities are and how to then balance them with the risk that is associated with some of these areas. And, in a similar manner, the constraints that we place on the thought process are essentially defined by us and nobody else. And we have to, just because this is a new way of thinking, new way of applying technology to solving problems that were previously not even solvable without applying lots of human effort to it, I think we have to change our mindset and think about things differently.
Yeah, kind of how we think about that here at Sember too is even like the example you gave, right? Also, there are other examples like Photoshop or Illustrators. When they first came about, a lot of people were doing pen and paper, marker, color for that for marketing agencies. They thought they were out of their job, but actually, things like software can create.
It created more opportunity for them.
Much bigger industries, even digital films and everything. So there's so much more vast opportunities that comes about. But with AI agents, a lot of the work can be automated. So we're kind of thinking, re-envision our mission statement as we're building the AI workforce of tomorrow. So everyone who used to be an IC almost now have to be great at managing this AI workforce. So they, instead of having just doing IC work, now they have to tell the AI agent workforce.
Why should we be limited as humans to 40 hours per week of productivity? Why is it not 100 hours or 300 hours per week? I think by embracing some of these types of capabilities, that's where we can go. And that's the opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like it's going from bicycle. I think Steve Jobs used to call computing and use bicycle as an analogy. With the same amount of force, actually, even with less amount of force, you can go much further.
Yeah.
I think what AI is creating is a much more even nonlinear, exponential, asymmetric output compared to the amount of effort that's going in. So more we lean in, I think the gap's gonna widen. Just like how an F1 driver, within the same amount of time, they can drive much, much longer distances. So I think the gap between a non-AI enabled person and truly AI-enabled, AI leaning in person, the productivity will not go from 40 hours to 400, go to 4,000 hours and 40,000 hours because they can employ hundreds, if not thousands of AI agents.
Right.
So I think just learning about that, adopting it, leaning into the change, I think is super critical, especially in this time when we're just getting started.
Absolutely.
Kind of going to your comment around the fear, trepidation. How do you communicate to your prospects and customers like, hey, of course, there's fears and anxiety, the FUD. What is your message to get them to go over that hurdle?
A lot of the customers that we work with are in industries like financial services, insurance, healthcare, life sciences, and even in the non-regulated verticals. These are very large customers running extremely critical business operations where they have a very high degree of need for accuracy and precision. And, just as the example that I had used in the past, that I haven't met a business that wants to move slower. Everybody, even if they, you look at an industry and you would say that's a very slow moving industry, but even when you have the conversation with them, their aspirational goal is to move faster. In a similar manner, when you think about the business operations that they're running, there is a certain amount of precision and accuracy that they've already hit. They don't want to dilute that. They want to make sure that they're able to maintain and make that precision and accuracy better. So a lot of times, the concern starts around, will they be able to get that same level of precision and accuracy, or what are you going to do to make sure that we can hit that and then make things better from there? And that's where a lot of the things like hallucinations, become a part of the conversation. But again, this is where, how are you informing the AI models? What is the system of context that you're using to inform those AI models makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So, that's the value proposition that we offer, where we are able to bring that level of precision and accuracy to the conversation with the type of system of context that we are putting in place for these customers to operate with.
So let's say now they're a believer. They're like, okay, we're ready to buy. We want to try it out.
Yeah.
What are some of the non-obvious bottleneck that's holding them from adopting AI in enterprises? Like the moment from them, like, okay, let's go. What are some of the hurdles they face?
I think it's more of the hurdles on our side than their side. Obviously, there has to be a willing person within that enterprise to be able to work with and bring some of these ideas to fruition. But think about the traditional software model, where from a software selling perspective, most of the companies had operated in the model, buy the product and then we will deploy it for you. Versus here, people want to see what is the business value that you can deliver. How can you deliver? Because nobody knows the clear answer, and they're all trying to get to some kind of an answer. And that's where the engagement and experimentation has to precede the sale of the software itself. So that's where the forward deployed engineering model comes into play, or those kinds of different ways of engaging with the customer come into play.
So then has your go-to-market motion in terms of POC, POV, how has that changed with this whole adoption of AI?
By design, we are also making sure that we can engage in that manner with our customers. So having a team organized for that forward deployed engineering type of a motion, getting involved in the art of the possible type of not just conversation, but proving it out that this is how it can be delivered with the capabilities that we bring to the table. And then going into the productionization of those capabilities or rollout of those capabilities across the organization.
Yeah, so which means like the leaders really across all types of business have to be able to instill confidence in their own teams, right? Not just with the tools, but the overall kind of business outcomes. Because to your point, not everyone...
And educate their own teams in parallel. Because, a lot of these teams have ideas or thoughts about where they can go with this kind of a capability, but they don't necessarily have all the skills available within their teams to be able to run with it. And that's where, the product teams collaborating closely with the customers becomes a great way to collaborate and co-create.
It almost becomes like, and we do this at Sember too, is you have to kind of become a consultative / trusted advisor.
Yes.
To these companies and go in with a lot of education and then really kind of remove the FUD, but also at the same time inspire them, but give them very tangible action items and content that they can learn from.
Tangible outcomes that we can help deliver along with them.
So recently I came across an article, and we also done some market studies on this. So every company have a slightly different kind of capacity modeling when it comes to building out these forward deployment teams. And some investors have called out this cost of serving a customer has become so ginormous. You're deploying very expensive engineers, product managers in the field to serve a 5-figure, 6-figure customer. The cost itself is more than the contract value. So how do you kind of think about the capacity modeling of some of these forward deployment teams?
Well, this is a great question because, one of the things I'm sure that you're also grappling with the same type of an issue. If you look at the traditional way of measuring efficiency of any kind of a software startup, the standard metrics are now getting violated. Whether it is cost of customer acquisition or the way in which the ratio and proportion of the teams at certain size and scale needs to evolve for efficiency reasons. All of that is being turned upside down. And, that's a valid concern. But at the same time, I think it's something that is required. So the way we have measured efficiency in the past versus how we should be measuring efficiency of some of these software businesses that are leaning heavily into the forward deployed engineering type of constructs will have to shift and change a little bit. We don't have a precise answer around it, but this is a part of the evolution.
No silver bullet yet?
No silver bullet yet.
I heard you spoke previously about the reinvention of software application. As we know, like because of wide adoption of AI, even like a lot of the industry thought leaders have said like, well, SaaS is dead, AI agents gonna change everything. Can you share your kind of this idea about what you talk about in the past with our audience?
So, there has been a lot of talk, as you said, about SaaS is dead. I don't think SaaS is dead. Think about applications and think about application first architectures. Almost every application that has been invented till date thought about the business process or the business problem that they wanted to solve. They then designed their application to serve that particular need. They then designed a data model to support that type of business process. And that's what I would refer to as an application first architecture. Versus if it's the same information, think about a financial institution. In a financial institution, you have the client experience type of systems and capabilities that they're building. In parallel, they're building the anti-money laundering type of application and capabilities. As a third adjunct, they're building KYC or know your customer type of intelligence capabilities. And then they have other compliance requirements, but each one of them was being treated as a separate silo. Each one of them needed access to the same client information. Mm-hmm. So now let's pivot forward, look at the future state. In the future state, the entire way of designing systems, especially with the availability of the agentic capabilities, is going to be a data-first architecture, where you're going to think about what is the core set of data that you need to operate against and build different kinds of business processes. So all these things in the financial institution, as an example, can run against that same client data. If you're serving a client experience type of a capability or supporting a call center type of a need or supporting KYC, AML, all these types of compliance initiatives, they should be operating against the same unified view of information. And agentic capabilities, in a way, not only enable that further, but they also need that context. Because think about the benefit of AI. The benefit of AI is not just replacing the existing capabilities, which I'll talk about in a second, but they also are really good at coming up with the cause and effect correlation. Yep. So, for example, if you have something going on in support, but you are in parallel managing a new sales cycle with the same customer at the same time, but these are managed in two completely different and isolated systems. You don't know what's going on or what should be your next best action associated with it. Versus if you had the information coming together, then you can inform that next best action through the AI model type of capabilities. Now, let's talk about what it's going to replace and why this concern around SaaS is dead. In the application space, if you think about the history, in order for you to have a CRM system, there is a person or a development team that has spent many, hundreds of thousands of hours creating the capability for you to be able to configure 15 or 20 different screens. Or the BI dashboards, how to configure them, how to populate them, versus if you have the data layer available in a robust manner, now you're asking a prompt, please show me the information for this particular opportunity, for this particular customer, and display it in the best visual format. the prompt can generate that. Or if you want a report, you can ask it, what kind of a visual format would be best suited? So you're removing a ton of pre-work that used to happen and replacing it with prompt-driven capabilities where you can generate these types of outcomes on the fly. And we are at the very early stages. This capability will only get better. Now, if you take a step back and think about what does it mean for all these businesses that have been built out for CRM applications, ERP applications, or human capital management type of applications. These are business processes, but do they really need this heavy duty infrastructure that they have put in place for the screens and the visuals that were being created and the 15 clicks that you had to do in an application to get to a specific piece of information? Or can that just be a prompt that leads you to that answer?
Yeah, this is fascinating. I guess two related follow-up questions. One comment and one question. So at Sember, we call it the omnipresence and the omniwise of AI agents. So because we focus a lot on customer services, and when you say customer services, call it 70% customer support, but sometimes like 30% would be the sales experience.
Right.
You gave a perfect example because that's the experience I had when I was talking to one of the largest telcos in America. I was trying to cancel a line, lots of frustration, long wait times, hugely frustrating. And that moment, because the CRM system thought I relogged to the website, they started sending me marketing offers like buy more, like unlock, buy more devices. I'm like, I'm trying to cancel a line. Yeah. So it actually made me even more upset about this business when they were not simply taking care of my current issue that's hot and burning here and now. So because the departments and the budget and everything is like operating in silo.
They're designed to operate in silos.
So one of the vision that we're building towards is connecting all the data at the hip, potentially we could partner there, is how do we get the AI agent to know what's happening with the customers across the board. So our idea of omnipresence is across any channels, SMS, phone calls, in-app, email. We know exactly what's happening, and the same AI is available through all channels. And whichever channel you're talking to, let's say you're going through a tunnel, a phone call with a virtual AI agent, and then you go through a tunnel, your cell get disconnected, you immediately get a text back, hey, we just recognize that you got disconnected. You can dial back and continue where you left off, or text me to continue the conversation here, or click this link, go to the app, and you can see all the transcription and summary of your conversation so far, and you can continue the conversation there. So really, our idea is omniwise or omniscient is to connect those data so the AI agent has a full perspective of what's happening with the client. So that's one quick comment. But you kind of mentioned about prompt or / kind of messaging being the primary form of user interface. The application first architecture you mentioned, a lot of SaaS vendors were using UIs, desks, lots of charts. You have to hire a dedicated person to create charts, and somebody to provide data to create charts to offer this person to work with, right? But in a perfect world, you can talk to this AI agentic interface. It will create beautiful charts, whichever report, just like you talk to someone on your team. It's like, hey, I'm looking to see this data in this kind of format. That person will come back with beautiful spreadsheets, local dashboard, and things like that. So where do you see in the future where this UI takes a backseat? What does that world look like? And is the prompt, or what are variation of UI do you think it will happen in the future?
Well, first of all the work to pre-configure screens, pre-configure dashboards, that's going to go away. And UI is still the most relevant way in which humans can understand information. But the best possible UI for a particular use case, that can be generated by an AI model. And when a human is interacting with it, you ask a question, a natural language question, but your response that you get back from that question is going to be displayed in a nice, neat format that is best suited for that particular interaction. So that's the evolution that will take place and already starting to happen. But that will also displace a lot of this work that took place before to create and pre-configure some of these experiences.
And assuming you're using some of the models that's publicly available, would it be any kind of like major frontier models? if every company is going to have an AI, and there's a lot of great coding platforms out there that's hopefully saves a lot of engineers' time as well. What is the next moat that a company like you and like us can have? And I think I have a sense of where your answer is going to be. I'm kind of curious.
So, two things to keep in mind. One is that the data that is unique to a particular business is going to be the proprietary set of information that they will feed into these frontier models. And frontier models come prepared with everything outside the business that is there to know. But what's inside the business is unique and proprietary to that business. So that's one. The second thing, if we look at it from moat for software players or industry, I think time is going to be the only moat. So who can move faster and get there to a sizable outcome in terms of delivering value? That is going to be the only moat left, because everything else, and we have seen this in software. If anything, was described as a software problem, given enough time, you could solve it. But now those time frames are going to get compressed dramatically as compared to what we have seen before. And that's going to be, time is going to be the only moat left in this entire landscape.
Well, you're a founder. So maybe kind of putting the founder hat for a second, looking 5 to 10 years out, what is kind of business model that we haven't yet seen that AI may potentially introduce to our world?
I think right now where we sit, 5 to 10 years is too long a time frame. I think we all have to shrink it down to 2 to 3 years max, and which sounds very different from the way we used to operate. And we are already starting to see some of that evolution. For example, if you think about the businesses that were doing per seat type of a license-based model, is that going to be relevant anymore? Will anybody end up using it? The answer is no. That's not going to be relevant. And as more and more of these capabilities become commoditized, you will see more of it leaning towards the raw, compute utilization type of paradigm as being the basis to inform some of the pricing or the commercialization type of capabilities. And I'm sure that there will be a few other changes that will come down the pike, because the other thing that is going to happen is a massive consolidation of categories in itself, where different features, different capabilities that may have been adjacencies or standalone businesses, they would have to think about how they become a consolidated capability, broader set of features and functions being offered under a single platform to the customers. And by the way, this is not just a large company type of a play. This is again back to the question of who can execute better in the shortest possible time frame to get to that broader spectrum of capabilities that they can offer under one umbrella. So we will see those kinds of evolutions. Beyond that, I think it'll be interesting to watch the landscape and see how things evolve. But we are absolutely in for a massive sea change over the next 2 to 3 years.
That's interesting, because 2 to 3 years ago, we didn't have ChatGPT. And I remember sitting with in the OpenAI office with Sam, talking about where Semper should go. And back then, there was no ChatGPT. So still OpenAI was very much into research mode.
Yeah.
I think they're building models to make AI play games better than humans. So the world has changed a lot in the past 2 to 3 years. So yeah, to your point, 5 to 10 years out feels like such a distant future, especially the world is moving at a nonlinear pace. And again, humans are not great at thinking in a nonlinear way. So are there any lessons you want to share working with your own customers and your own experience adopting AI at Reltio that our audience can apply to their own business today?
In terms of adopting AI to our own business, as we, over the last couple of years, saw this entire evolution of the capabilities, one of the things that became clear was that it's not just waiting for the organic uptake of the capabilities. It has to be a balance between a top-down push of how or what we need to embrace, why we need to embrace it, why is it necessary to move at a certain velocity towards the North Star orientation that you're defining, but then also looking for ways in which it can be an organic uptake through the organization, because the time and place that we are at requires a combination of both of those things taking place so that we can meet in the middle with the right kind of pace, synergy, and outcomes to drive out of it. And that was very different from previous evolutions of technology and capabilities, where you had a different time scale to operate with, versus now the time scale is very different in this opportunity.
That actually resonates a lot, because one of the publicly traded company in Asia that recently became our customer, it was a CEO that says, I want AI agent in production a month from now. It actually took them 2 months still, which is fantastic. Velocity from their first meeting with our team to getting to a decision and scoping took about a month. But from that moment to actual implementation and testing and launching took another month, and they're out in production. They've automated up to 88% of our customer inquiries using AI agents. And that's usually not what you see from large enterprises, who is the most well-known in the industry. So to your point around top-down meeting bottom-up, and I think I learned somewhere a long time ago, when it comes to communication, people think bottom is always a better route. But when the plane is on fire, you want to tell the people, get out of the plane, not like, hey, what do you think? So there has to be a mix of top-down to drive that sense of urgency and alignment, while still having the bottom up to understand how to actually implement and to get the most effectiveness. That's what you need to do in terms of implementation and making sure the entire organization is coming along the journey. So,
absolutely. Completely agree with that.
So we like to end each of our episode with what we call the human prompt. Let's say all of a sudden you got access to this super intelligence, AGI, that doesn't hallucinate, is all the safeguard rails are in place, the privacy concerns and everything is like in place. What is the one prompt that you want to ask that AI agent, either to make your life better or happier?
As a founder, my mind always gravitates towards how do we scale the business, where we are, what should be the next step, those kinds of questions first, because being a founder is an all immersive type of experience. So, if I had access to something like this, my prompt would be primarily focused on what would be the one chess move that would allow us to tremendously accelerate the trajectory of where we are, to the next stage of evolution, based on the current product, based on our current size and scale, and the unique value proposition that we bring to the table. Because, if you again think about everything that we do, we always look at 10 different opportunities or 10 different priorities, and then try to figure out which one is the best step forward. And this is where I would apply that kind of a prompt or a capability to make sure that we are able to outline what would be that one move that would bring us closer to the future.
Yeah, I like the analogy of chess move, because I think AI now plays chess a lot better than humans.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Manish, this is an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being with us today. For the audience, if they want to learn more about you or the company, where can they find you?
Well, they can find us at reltio.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me, and happy to engage in any conversation. But thank you, John, for having me on this show. Really enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks so much.